Today on History's Tech, we are looking at the ever-famous North American F-86 Sabre. The Sabre is famous for going head-to-head with the swept-wing fighter, the MiG-15, in some of the earliest jet-to-jet aerial combat in history. And while it had an amazing career with over 9,800 units produced and a career that spanned into the mid-1990s, it was an aircraft that almost was never built. But let's go ahead and look at the development of the F-86 Sabre. The development of the Sabre came after North American Aviation's development of arguably their most famous aircraft, the P-51 Mustang. So North American Aviation decided to get into the development of jet aircraft with their first jet aircraft, the FJ-1 Fury, a naval jet aircraft. Now, the Fury was the United States Navy's first jet aircraft to be used under sea operational conditions, meaning it was actually deployed at sea. I will be doing an entire video on the Fury in the future when I swing back around for naval aircraft. Now, in mid-1944, the United States Army Air Force put out a requirement for a new medium-range, single-seat, high-altitude, jet-powered day fighter. North American Aviation submitted 4 designs, and the NA-140, later known as the XP-86, was accepted by the USAAF. It was a modified Fury designed to be lighter by removing many of the requirements needed for an aircraft to fly on aircraft carriers. And while these improvements did gain more speed for the aircraft, it couldn't compete with its competition, the XP-80 and the XP-84. Both of these aircraft had similar performance and were already way ahead in their development to the point they were about to be deployed as full aircraft instead of just prototypes. And more importantly, the XP-86 could not meet the minimum requirement speed of 600 miles per hour. Thus, unless North American Aviation did something radically different, the aircraft would be dropped and they would not receive any contracts. Utilizing flight research data seized from the Germans at the end of World War II, North American Aviation devised that they could actually make some improvements by establishing a swept wing on the aircraft. And after some opposition from North American staff, a series of wind tunnel tests determined that this prototype with swept wings would be a vast improvement. The new and improved XP-86 prototype was rolled out August 8, 1947. The next 2 years would see the XP-86 and later F-86 go through a few small variants and developments, allowing for better engines and improvements with training for pilots being trained to go from a propeller to jet aircraft. The first Air Force unit finally receiving an F-86 in 1949. There was no rush at the time to fill out the role of other Air Force units with the F-86, as there were already other jet aircraft in service, until the Korean War. The Korean War dramatically changed the need for the F-86, mainly due to the fact that the early jet aircraft being used at the time, the F-80 and the F-84, while initially the dominant aircraft of the Korean War, were quickly overpowered by the new MiG-15. The MiG-15 was a much superior air fighter to the F-80 and the F-84. And at the time of its introduction, the MiG-15 could outperform any UN-based aircraft. As a response, 3 squadrons of F-86s were immediately rushed into Korea to combat the MiG-15. Now, sadly, the early production models of the F-86 were nowhere near able to match the MiG-15's service ceiling, its firepower, its acceleration, its turning, its rate of climb, and its ability to zoom climb. But all of that began to change with the development of the F-86E. The F-86E had a all-moving tailplane, which allowed it to maneuver much better at speeds in excess of Mach 1. The next major improvement came with the F-86F, which after the development of Project Gunvow, which is designed to test new armament, the F-86s were armed with 4 20mm cannons instead of 6 50 caliber machine guns. And this would be the end of the use of the Browning 50 caliber as the standard air-to-air aircraft weapon. Add to this improved gun sights, and the Sabre was now able to finally compete with the MiG-15. Now, by the end of the Korean War, the initial reports showed that 792 MiGs had been lost, with only a loss of 78 Sabres in air-to-air combat, creating a ratio of 10-1. This is supported by the fact that the 41 American pilots who earned the designation of ace during the Korean War all flew an F-86 Sabre except for one, and that pilot was of a Vought F-4U Corsair. The actual success of the Sabre in the Korean War is kind of up for debate, and there's some back and forth on its kill ratio. Initially, the Air Force claimed a kill ratio of 10-1, which is countered by Soviet arguments that they actually shot down more Sabres than MiGs were lost. Afterwards, the Air Force went back and reevaluated it, and they actually believed that the kill ratio was 5-1. However, more recent reports maybe put it closer to 2-1. Now, regardless of what the data may be, the aircraft did what the United States needed. It was a swept-wing fighter that allowed it to compete with the new emerging next-generation swept-wing fighters. Sadly, by the end of the Korean War, the F-86's replacement, the F-100 Super Sabre, was already in development, and the F-86 would end its time with the United States rather quickly, being relegated to an Air National Guard role. It would continue to see service with other countries, such as the Republic of China Air Force in the 1958 Gulf of Tonkin Straits crisis, and the Pakistan Air Force, where it would serve in multiple conflicts, including multiple Indo-Pakistan wars. It would see its last real combat with the Guinea-Bissau War of Independence in the mid-50s into the 1960s, would continue to serve with more than 30 nations around the world, finally be retired by the Bolivian Air Force in 1994. While we could end the story of the Sabre there, it actually has some pretty interesting legacy accounts. Its legacy includes at least one Soviet Sabre in which the Soviet Union managed to get an intact F-86 and test it for evaluation purposes. Another piece of the F-86's legacy is Project Feather Duster. Due to the ever-increasing losses of more modern fighters against the old MiG-17, Feather Duster was created as a way of devising supersonic tactics against the MiG-17. An F-86 was used in place of the MiG-17 and was placed against aircraft such as the F-100, the F-104, the F-105, and the F-4 Phantom. During this test, it was discovered that the F-86 was actually a superior fighter to these more modern jet aircraft. And the F-86 Sabre was used by Jackie Cochran to be the first woman to break the sound barrier, along with her escort, Chuck Yeager. Now, because of the extremely vast quantities of aircraft built and the fact that they were licensed to be built in Canada, Italy, and Japan, there are actually hundreds of these aircraft on display around the world. With more than 20 capable of flying in the United States alone, this aircraft is a collector's piece and will probably still be flying for quite some time. But there you have it, a quick look at the development and the history of the F-86 Sabre, a jet that served a relatively short time in the United States military, but served for a long time in militaries around the world. And its importance to history can't be understated. It was the jet the United States needed to combat the MiG, and it even proved later on that just because a jet is older does not mean it can't compete with more modern jet aircraft. But that's it for today. Thank you for joining me, and I look forward to talking to you on the next time.